Well, welcome everybody. Today you get the opportunity to see and learn about the sheep industry here in Lenawee County. The first thing we're going to start and do is we are going to do sheep shearing. So we're going to give this sheep a haircut. It does not hurt the sheep. It is actually healthy for the sheep. It keeps them from getting too hot in the summer. Think about it. If you go outside this summer and put all the sweatshirts that you have in your closet on and go outside when it's 90 degrees, you're not going to be very comfortable. So that's why we do this. They might kick and fight, but it's because sheep like to be in a group. That's why we call it a flock of sheep. They want to be together. So she may fight, but this hurts her in no way. It's just like you getting a haircut. The difference is I can't tell her to move when I need her to turn her head one way or the other. So I have to do it for her, okay? So it scares her a little bit. But I just want you guys to know that this is perfectly healthy and good for the sheep, and that's why we're doing it. And we get some really cool products when we're all done. So we're gonna get started, and I'll talk you guys through our process. So we're gonna turn on our shearing machine, and we're gonna start shearing with the belly of the animal. So I'm taking off the belly wool because we don't want the belly wool to go with the other wool. The reason why that is because the belly wool is not the same quality. Think of it like their pillow or their bed. They lay on it, so the wool gets a lot dirtier because they're laying outside in the mud and the dirt. And it's a lot shorter because it's got pressure on it all the time. It doesn't have the chance to grow like the other wool does. So this sheep here that I'm shearing is what we call a ewe, E-W-E. And that is a female sheep. She is actually just over a year old. So we are shearing her so that next year, later this fall, she can get bred, and next year she'll have her own babies on our farm. So as we're moving along, you see how on this sheep, I'm not actually holding the sheep with my hands. They're very comfortable sitting like this. It's all with my legs. So we threw the belly wool out of the way, and now we're gonna work our way up the animal. So I'm shearing the leg. And this style of shearing was actually designed in New Zealand, and this is called the New Zealand style of shearing. So they have a lot more sheep than we do, so they've gotten very good. So the average shearer here in the United States will shear a sheep anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes a sheep. Where over in Australia and New Zealand and other parts of Europe, they'll shear sheep anywhere from 45 seconds to 1.5 minutes a sheep. And they shear year round because they have so many sheep. So I went up the leg to get that out of the way. I stand the sheep up again with just my legs. And if you guys watch, I'm going to take and bend over her neck. Again, this doesn't hurt her, but we're trying to adjust it to keep her from getting hurt, okay? So another fact of why we're talking about sheep is we'll talk about how many babies these guys have. So I'll give you guys a chance while you're in your classroom there, think about it, maybe take a guess, and then I'll give you the answer in just a second. I'll let you guys see if you can figure out how many babies a sheep should have every year. So a female sheep should have on average 2 babies a year. Now they can have anywhere from 1 to up to 5 depending on the breed. But we want them to only have 2 because they only have 2 teats to feed those babies. So if they have more than 2, somebody's always not getting enough food. So it's from a growth standpoint, we only want them to have 2. So I finished up with the leg and the neck. This here is what we call the long blows because I'm making really long strokes. And this is where a shearer can really get going and shear pretty fast. So anybody in your class that has sheep might have seen this done before, but normally somebody to shear sheep goes to a shearing school. So I went to a shearing school when I was 15 years old to learn how to do this properly. It takes hundreds of sheep before you learn how to properly shear and do a good job, because it's all about how you hold the animal so they don't fight you. So a sheep shearer gets paid not by the hour like most jobs, they get paid by the sheep. So I get paid for every sheep I shear. If I shear 10 sheep an hour, I get paid less than if I shear 60 sheep in a single time, okay? So on average, a sheep shearer is paid about, for easy math, we'll say $3 per sheep. So if I shear 50 sheep in a day, I just made $150. Now keep that number in the back of your mind, because once we are completely done, we're going to talk about that number when it comes to how much this wool that we just took off this sheep is worth. Okay? So if you look, see, that was pretty painless. The sheep is not injured at all. She's pretty happy and content, and a lot of times they'll actually just fall asleep. So she's got little pieces on her, but she is done and ready to go back home to the farm and be with her friends. So next step here we're going to talk about is hoof care. So with sheep, we have to take care of their hoofs. Imagine if I threw a rock in your shoe and you had to walk around all day. That wouldn't be very comfortable, would it? So sheep, their hooves grow a lot like the nails that you have on your hand. It doesn't hurt to get your nails clipped, does it? No, doesn't hurt to clip their nails either. But if we don't, they would get a rock stuck under there. So I have one of my students here, Nolan. He's going to take this sheep, and why he trims the hooves, I'm going to talk you guys through the process. All right, so our next step that we do every year on our farm after we're done shearing is hoof trimming. So we are trimming the sheep's hoof to make sure that they are in proper condition and don't get growth like rocks and other debris stuck in their foot to where it could cause them to not be able to walk. It'd be like if we threw a rock in your shoe and you had to walk around all day. It would not be comfortable. So we want to make sure that the sheep is able to get around while they're out in the pasture grazing. So all he's using is a pair of hoof nippers is what we call them, and they're like a pair of scissors to cut off the excess growth. The flap on the hoof is that overgrowth that we are cutting off, and it's like your fingernail. When your fingernails get cut, does it hurt? No, it's good to have them, or you'll have them too long and they can get caught on things. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to cut off that overgrowth on the hoof, and it literally can be tough. So you got to be very careful, and you don't want to cut too deep. It'd be like if we cut on your fingernail too far, it could cause a little bit of bleeding, or like your dog. So he's just cutting off the very little excess, and then we want to cut off the heel so that they can walk, and we want it flat. And then the next part is he's going to cut the tip. So you see how it's pointy at the end? We want to flatten it off. So it's going to clip off so that it's nice and smooth, and that way they don't get super long on them either. So you got to do a little trim up. Make sure all the debris is out of it. And as you can see, sometimes they get a little hard. So real quick, hold it up just like that, and you can see the difference between the two. The one on the right is what it should look like when it's clipped. Nice and flat and even, and nothing where manure or rocks can get stuck in. So we'll do the other side, and that's one whole hoof complete. And we'll do all 4 hooves, but for this demonstration today, we're just going to show you on one of them so that you guys can get an opportunity to see what we have to do for all of our sheep every year. So now that we're done with the sheep, we have this pile of wool here that we have to do something with. So while you guys are in class, if anybody knows what this pile of wool is called, why don't you tell your teacher, and she'll be able to tell you if you're right here in just a minute so we can let you guys know, okay? So as you can see, this pile of wool is all in one piece. That is what should happen when we're done shearing that sheep. It should all be one complete pile. If it's in lots of little pieces, the sheep was not sheared properly, and the wool is going to have a lot of short pieces, which makes it not usable for products, okay? So now that you've had a moment, this pile of wool is called a fleece. I hope somebody was able to get that right, but that fleece is what we can use for all different products. So I'm going to have my demonstrator, Ashton Gust, one of the students at the LISD Tech Center, go ahead and pick up that whole fleece and show you just how much wool came off of that one sheep. So you see how all that's right there in a big pile. That wool can now be taken and added into a pile of wool that can be cleaned and turned into products that you can buy at the store. Some of those products include things like socks, sweaters, bedding for inside your mattress or your blanket or pillow. And even in countries with lots of sheep, they're now using wool as insulation in homes because wool does not burn. So now we're going to pull off a piece of wool off of the fleece. And what we want to do is we want to look at the quality of the wool. So that tells us how much the wool can sell for and what we can use it for. There's 3 different types of wool. We have coarse wool, medium wool, and fine wool. Each of these wools can be used for different things. The sheep that we sheared today is a meat sheep. The main purpose of that sheep we raise it for is for meat. So the wool is not a very high quality wool, but it can still be used for things. That fleece that came off that sheep will weigh anywhere from 3 to 5 pounds of wool that we can sell. That wool we can sell for about 20 cents a pound. So if I have 5 pounds of wool at 20 cents, this is your math lesson for the day, kids, okay? We have $1 worth of wool. If you have to pay me, the shearer, $3, are you making any money with wool off of these sheep? No. That's why they are a meat sheep, okay? An average sheep in the U.S. will produce anywhere from 3 to 12 pounds of wool once a year. And that's how often we shear sheep in the U.S. Most of the sheep are sheared one time. There are a few that will be sheared twice a year, but that's not very common. So this type of wool will normally be used for carpets and bedding, where that fine wool will be for that stuff like sweaters and against your skin high quality products. So the last part I want to show you on wool is, can anybody at class take a guess why most wool we want is white wool? There's a reason behind that. We want white wool because only white can take dye. You've had purple sweaters, you've had orange sweaters, but have you ever seen a purple sheep? An orange sheep? I haven't, and I've sheared a lot of sheep. So white wool means we can dye it. If it is a colored wool, so black or brown or gray, we call that natural colored. And it can still be used for other products, but it's not desired by clothing manufacturers because it's stuck at that color. We can't change it. So that's all I have for wool, and I hope you guys enjoyed our presentation.